At Roland Garros, where the top stars and seeds have been falling left and right, we have one big standout quarterfinal women's match between Coco Gauff and Sloane Stephens. Can Coco go one step further than last year to make her maiden slam semifinal? Or can Sloane return to the Final Four here in Paris for the first time in 4 years? I'll preview this matchup before giving my ultimate prediction of who I think will make it to the semis here on Grand Slam Tennis News Today. Prior to Roland Garros, Gauff was having a mid-clay court season, going 4-3 and making the round of 16s at Rome and Madrid. All of her lead-up losses were pretty respectable as she fell to current Roland Garros quarterfinalists Daria Kasatkina in Stuttgart, Halep in Madrid, then Sakari in Rome. However, she lost all 3 of those matches in straight sets, with the forehand once again being the big outlying weakness. Coco's draw here at the French was definitely more favorable as all of her opponents, even now at Sloane, have been ranked lower than she. Gauff opened with a solid 7-5, 6-love win over Rebecca Marino and followed it up with a 6-1, 7-6 victory over Alison van Uytvanck. Coco weathered the storm from Kaya Kanepi, taking it 6-3, 6-4 before earning her most impressive victory thus far, taking out 31st seed Elisa Mertens 6-4, 6-love. Coco has definitely been more of a counter-puncher this tournament as she's relied more on her defensive capabilities and prowess, which she then sometimes transitions into offense and really taking the ball earlier and moving forward into the net. This was understandably a good strategy in the first 3 rounds as all 3 of those opponents were big hitters whose more frequent mistakes could be taken advantage of. I was surprised to see that Gauff took that passive approach still in the 4th round against Mertens, who is more of a steady, consistent player herself. The first set of that Mertens match was definitely a grind fest, with there being a lot of extended rallies, and Gauff actually won a majority of the longer exchanges, while Mertens earned a good portion of the shorter ones, especially in that first set. Speaking of which, the first set was nearly an hour long, and once Coco was able to take it, the match was totally one-sided. The American got better as the match wore on and was completely able to break Mertens' game down and strip her confidence. Gauff applied more pressure and amped up the aggression a bit, especially with that forehand where she was able to change direction a little bit more. Gauff's defense was still impeccable, being able to chase down a whole bunch of balls most players wouldn't even be able to get their rackets on. She was also able to go from defense to offense very, very well, which wore down Elisa even more. Tennis Channel's Lindsay Davenport was hyping up that Gauff-Mertens match a lot, especially in the first set, and she talked about how it was extremely high quality tennis. I don't necessarily agree because long rallies don't always equate to high level tennis. I felt that a lot of balls, especially from Coco's forehand side, would have been eaten alive from the likes of Swiatek. Also, on that note, Davenport said that Coco's probably the one player that can trouble Swiatek, which was confusing because the poll dismantled Coco 3-1 at Miami a couple months back. Regardless though, Gauff did elevate her game nicely towards the end of that Mertens match, and she seems to be getting better and better as the tournament progresses. Moving over to Sloane, she was really down bad prior to the French. She came into the tournament nasty on a 5-match losing streak and had lost to the world number 292 in Strasbourg a week prior to the event. Stephens had also just won 1 match aside from her Guadalajara title run earlier in the year. It's safe to say that Stephens has had a great turnaround here at Roland Garros. Sloane ended the streak after beating Julia Niemeyer in the first round. The second round is where things really shifted as she went down 6-3, 2-love to 26 seed Sorana Cirstea before reeling off 12 straight games to move through. Stephens then ended Frenchwoman Diane Parry's run, winning 6-2, 6-3. Then in the 4th round, the American played one of her best matches ever from start to finish, beating 23rd seed Joe Teichmann 6-2, 6-love. As I just talked about, Sloane's entire tournament since the Cirstea match has changed for the better. Much of it seems to be rooted from the mental aspect, as she seems to be much more sure of herself out there on court. Like Coco, Sloane can play either defense or offensive tennis so very well, so sometimes she doesn't really know how exactly she wants to play the points. Here she's done an excellent job of incorporating both of those facets of her game. The last 12 games of the Cirstea match, she was hitting winners from all around the court, while also scrambling for her life and getting every single ball back, it seemed like. It was like that against Teichmann too, which was surprising because first, Jill had been playing so well leading up to Roland Garros as she made the quarters of Rome, and the semifinals of Madrid. Teichmann was honestly a big favorite here against Sloane because many people thought that this would be a Krejcikova part 2, where Jill would beat Sloane in the 4th round before taking out Gauff in the quarters like the Czech woman did last year. It seemed like that initially as Jill broke first to get out to a 2-love lead. That was all she wrote though, as Stevens once again claimed the next and last 12 games of the match. When Sloane's on, it's just a sight for sore eyes. I say this so often, but her talent is undeniable, and honestly, she should have at least 5 slams. Stevens' game is tailor-made for the clay, as she has that big heavy forehand that's even more effective on the surface as the ball bounces higher and is more effective in pushing opponents back. And then plus with her movement and defensive skills, it's hard to get anything past her. It's also very hard to get Sloane on the defensive in the first place because she's hit such a heavy ball. There's a reason why Roland Garros is her best performing slam, and a title run here is truly overdue. Going back to the matchup of Gauff-Stevens itself, the two have played once, which was their US Open second round match. Stevens took it quite decisively 4-2, despite Gauff being the favorite there. The match was pretty competitive early on, up until 4-all, where Gauff had a weak service game and Sloane took full advantage. Coco did have an opening in the early part of the second set, but Stevens snuffed it out and cruised to victory. Sloane served incredibly well and only allowed Gauff one break point in this entire match. Stevens' forehand was the big weapon out there on court, and she was able to dictate and go from defense to offense with the snap of a finger. Gauff's forehand, meanwhile, was a big liability and broke down as the match wore on. Both women are excellent movers, but Stevens' defensive skills were the more effective as they induced a lot more unforced errors from Gauff's racket. For Sloane to repeat this result, she needs to make sure that she maintains the high level of serving we saw from her in New York. She was able to get a lot of routine holds, which was large in part due to her high first serve percentage of 82, as well as strong first and second serve points won with 83 and 75% respectively. This was foundational in keeping good scoreboard pressure while also freeing herself up on return. The next point is for Sloane to look for more forehand-to-forehand exchanges. We all know that Sloane's forehand is much stronger than Coco's, as the 18-year-old stroke is prone to breaking down, especially in the tighter moments. Stevens needs to make sure that she keeps applying pressure and pace to prevent Gauff from using that high loopy forehand that's more difficult to attack, especially on the clay. The third point I have for Sloane is to keep attacking Gauff's second serve. Coco's second serve is a bit weaker than it should, and Stevens took advantage in New York, attacking it a lot. It will be a little bit harder for Sloane to do this on clay, but she can still at least apply pressure and get Coco on the defensive earlier on in the rallies. The last and final thing for Stevens is to maintain her focus throughout this entire match. Sloane has been prone to having mental lapses during her matches where she completely goes away and has a dramatic dip in her level. It hasn't been an issue this tournament thus far, but she can afford to have a big dip in level here as Gauff has the energy and moxie to shape this entire tempo. Now for Coco to be successful, she needs to make sure that she maintains good depth on her shots. Many of her shots against Mertens were landing short in the court, which won't fly against Sloane. Whenever Gauff did get good depth in New York, she was able to keep Stevens at bay and step in herself to dictate. The next point I have is to go after the Stevens backhand. Gauff's backhand is definitely her best shot, and while Sloane's is solid too and has been much more effective this fortnight, it cannot do as much damage as that fear hand. Keeping those backhand to backhand exchanges obviously prevents that forehand to forehand clash that favors Sloane. It also opens up the court more for Gauff for her to then change it up and get Sloane on the move. Speaking of which, I want Coco to change direction with Stevens whenever possible. As I mentioned earlier, Gauff really started dominating Mertens when she began changing directions and started taking the forehand up the line more, for example. This would be a good play against Sloane, who can drag the young American off the court with her forehand. Coco can combat this by changing the angle of play and taking it up the line. The final point I have for Gauff is to try to move forward whenever she has the opportunity. Coco's net prowess is remarkable, and even on the clay, she's been effective in the forecourt, taking advantage of her opponent's court positioning. Against Mertens, Gauff managed to take 85% of net points. That's 17 out of 20. It won't be as easy to do this against Sloane, but I think Gauff should have the mindset of actively looking to move forward and taking the ball out of the air. I favor her chances up there at the net higher than from the ground during those baseline affairs. For my prediction, I have Stevens taking this match in 3 sets. To me, Sloane should be the strong favorite because of how well she played the past few rounds. Gauff played well too, but Sloane was simply on another level during that Teichmann match, so it's hard for me to picture the 18-year-old matching, let alone topping that level. However, Sloane has been prone to underperforming immediately following a solid win like this. We all know how streaky Stevens is, as it can take her literally one match for her to catch fire. However, just as Sloane can be hot, her game can go cold just as fast. Also, Sloane has struggled in her past few major quarterfinals. She looked strong all the way through, or most of the way through, the 2018 US Open, playing great matches against Azarenka and Mertens, but she stumbled in the quarterfinals to Anastasia Sevastova 2-3. Then looking back to her most recent slam quarters appearance, the 2019 French Open, Sloane dominated Muguruza in the round of 16 before being dominated herself by Jo Konta 1-4. This is a big reason why I have Coco at least taking a set here. Moreover, Gauff, as I mentioned, loves the clay, so I feel like with the different conditions, we won't see as big of a blowout like in New York at the US Open. Now, I do worry for Coco because first, this will be a huge match for her as she has a solid shot at not only reaching the semifinals, but reaching the finals soon after playing either Leylah or the 59th ranked Martina Trevisan. Gauff has good nerve, but she can falter in the pressure moments of big matches, like last year versus Krejcikova in the same round when she let 5 set points slip by before eventually falling in straights. Also, looking back at that Krejcikova match, I feel like Coco's level last year is a bit higher than at this year's tournament. Then her forehand was much more solid, and she was hitting her ground strokes with much greater conviction. This year, we've definitely seen a more passive Gauff, which will not cut it here, I feel. She very well could come out and play an even higher level of tennis than last round, as she's highly capable of doing so. However, it'll be harder to maintain in a slam quarterfinal, and essentially the biggest match of her career thus far. Stevens has been in this position before, so I think her greater experience at the deeper stages of slams will ultimately push her over the finish line. That's all for this preview, and let me know in the comments whether you agree or disagree with me having Sloane move through. Also, make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell so you're notified whenever I make more Roland Garros match previews. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time here on Grand Slam Tennis News Today.